Earlier today, we huddled here in the Garrison Coffee House with Ted Cruz. I started out by asking Cruz about the biggest policy differences he has with Ben Carson.
The biggest difference between me and the other candidates on the Republican side is that I have a consistent record of standing and fighting for conservative principles, of being a fiscal conservative, a social conservative, a national security conservative, and actually walking the walk. So, for example, you know, I've said a lot of times I think Donald Trump's running has been very beneficial for our campaign because it's helped frame the central issue in the primary as who will stand up to Washington. Now, if that's the central issue, the natural next question is who has stood up to Washington. And I can't think of a better question to decide this race because my record is markedly different, standing up not just to Democrats, but leaders in our own party.
Ben Carson has no record of standing up to Washington, I presume is part of what you're saying.
Well, that is one of the marked differences. You know, you go back to 2013, when millions of Americans rose up against the disaster that is Obamacare. I was proud to lead the fight against Obamacare. And of the other 9 candidates on that debate stage, where were they? None of the other 9 stood up and led in 2014 when millions of conservatives rose up against Obama's illegal executive amnesty. Again, I was proud to lead that fight. Again, the other 9 were nowhere to be found. And even going back just a couple of weeks ago to the fight over Planned Parenthood. You know, at the last debate in California, just about every Republican candidate looked in the TV camera and said, we should defund Planned Parenthood. Well, we had a knockdown, drag-out fight in Washington, D.C. Millions of conservatives rose up against Planned Parenthood. Once again, I led the fight. And once again, not a single one of the other candidates was anywhere to be found. It was like they were in witness protection. And that, I think, explains the continued momentum our campaign is getting from the grassroots, is they're looking for someone who can be counted on over and over again.
Jeb Bush is another Texan in a way, and he's well behind you in this Iowa poll, and you've been on the rise, as you said, in a lot of ways. He's retooling his campaign, making major staff cuts, budget cuts. I'm wondering if that surprises you, and if you feel you're on track now to make basically no changes. You've got a plan that's going to take you all the way through Iowa.
Well, we're actually going in the opposite direction, which is we are ramping up. As you know, our campaign, we've seen extraordinary fundraising success. We've had over 360,000 contributions, people all over the country going to tedcruz.org, supporting the campaign.
So on your campaign, no cutbacks, no changes. Your plan is
we're going the opposite direction.
Does it surprise you that Bush has had to make cutbacks?
Well, you know, one of the things we did before we launched the campaign is we studied failed presidential campaigns. And one of the areas they get killed is burn rates. People hemorrhage cash. There's a reason in the last finance report that our campaign reported the most cash on hand of any Republican in the field. $13.8 million in the bank, $3.5 million more than Jeb Bush, which frankly is nuts. I mean, nobody in politics would have predicted that.
So it looks like he failed to learn the lesson that you did.
Well, we focused very much on being lean early on, not spending money early on, saving our resources. We're now deploying them. We're now ramping up. We're opening offices on the ground. We're hiring field staff as we move into the primaries. We've got the grassroots and resources to compete hard in the first 4 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, but also nationally throughout Super Tuesday.
So the other day, President Bush, former President Bush, made a comment about it. He said of all the Republican candidates, you were the one who bugged him. We've noticed that we think you're a really pleasant guy and really nice to be around.
But you're going to kill me. If reporters are praising me, you're going to tank me in the Republican primaries.
I apologize for that. You can blame us for later. But it seems like a lot of your colleagues in the Senate and some of your colleagues who worked in the Bush administration, you kind of rub them the wrong way. You seem like you don't have a big cheering section in either one of those places. Is that a problem for someone who seeks to be the United States president?
Well, listen, as it concerns President George W. Bush, I like and respect him. And I was proud to work on his campaign, to work in the administration. Nobody is surprised that President Bush is supporting his brother. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that he's attacking candidates that they perceive as a real threat to their campaign.
Well, you're the only one he's attacked, though, so it's not...
Well, that may say something. But what I can say is I'm not going to respond in kind. I will sing his praises. I met my wife, Heidi, working on the George W. Bush campaign. There were 8 marriages came out of that campaign. So, a joke that I've told all over the country, it's a lousy joke. But whatever else anyone says of George W. Bush, in our house, he will always be a uniter and not a divider.
All right. Donald Trump's hosting Saturday Night Live. We talked to Dr. Carson this morning. He said he didn't think it was appropriate for a presidential candidate. Where's Ted Cruz on that important debate?
Look,
if you were asked, would you do it?
I grew up as a Saturday Night Live junkie, and so I love watching it.
If they asked you, would you be on? Would you guest host?
Sure. No, I would be thrilled to do it. Do you have the power to extend that invitation? Now that we could make news.
So
I would love to.
You were guest host to Saturday Night Live. Which famous recurring Saturday Night Live character could you ace? Wild and crazy guy, Conehead, what would you be good at?
Now that is an interesting question. I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of the old Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
When Eddie Murphy was 19, 20 years old, and he's still incredibly talented, but just this young phenom at SNL. I mean, he was hysterical. The problem is, I can actually do quite a few of those riffs, but none of them are appropriate in the world of politics. And so,
if Lauren Michaels is watching, you're ready.
Look, send me in, Coach. But it's and you know what? I'm sure Donald will do a terrific job. I mean, he has an extraordinary gift, and he's a marvelous entertainer. I think he'll be fabulous.
So Dr. Carson's view that, like, the presidency's serious, we're in very troubled times, he shouldn't be going on a show like that?
Look, I think you should have fun. You should laugh and enjoy yourself. That doesn't stop you from standing up and leading on serious issues, but too many Republicans have taken themselves way too seriously.
Senator, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Our thanks to Ted Cruz, who I think would make a pretty awesome John Belushi.